Hello, and thank you for checking out our second presentation, Wholesale Barriers Case Study Overview. This is a further discussion from a previous presentation and from the project USDA funded Assessing Barriers to Wholesaling for Small-Scale Vegetable Growers. And I'd like to also thank again Crystal Stewart for her assistance in helping with putting this study together with me. This program is focusing on the further in-depth research we did on this project, where we moved from a large survey, the 199 respondents, working our way down into focus groups, 3 focus groups of farmers, where we had lengthy discussions on their wholesaling experience or lack thereof. Their input was chronicled, and we put the results together as we built up this program. At the end of our focus groups, we found 8 individual farms that were willing to talk with more in-depth focus on their experiences with marketing and their issues, their needs, their worries and concerns. And these became the basis of our 8 case studies. So as it turned out, it broke out into 2 groups. There was one with farms that were currently wholesaling and planned to keep it that way. And the second group were farms that were trying to decide about moving into wholesale. Some had reservations, weren't sure which way to go. So it worked out conveniently that we had 2 groups at opposite ends of the spectrum. So starting with the farms that were already wholesaling, 3 of these farms had come from backgrounds where the wholesaling operations were started by previous generations. 2 were from fathers, 1 was from all the way back from grandfather. Another farm got into wholesaling by going from retail and then jumping right into wholesaling. They went out, talked with buyers, left them samples, gave them their contact information, made repeated visits until the buyers started calling them. They liked their product, they liked their quality and their consistency that they were showing, so they started moving into wholesaling. All 4 farms in this group were over 45 acres, so they were medium to medium large, as we typical for Western New York. All 4 farms focused their production with growing a lot of quantity of just a few crops. This allowed them to become specialized, and as they work through their production practices, become more efficient, so that they had the quantity. They were able to have some labor saving, or at least be able to be more profitable with it than they probably had started off being. And this was they mentioned that there was a large learning curve, meeting the needs of the buyers and quality, being flexible for them, having the consistency in their products, and timeliness of delivery. These were all really important points that they emphasized. And they've kept up with, or still trying to keep up with, the demands of the buyers. We'll talk about this item a little bit later. Three farms were concerned with changes in the marketplace. Some of them that they see changing, some of things that they've read through industry publications. Some of this concern was looking at is the crop mix that they have, is that something that they can continue to grow, or do they start needing to start finding something new? Each season seems to be that there's something new on the horizon, and that maybe they should be investing into growing some of those things. Food safety practices, tight margins, or margins that are becoming tighter, we should say. Frequent changes in packaging, and then just the worry or the legitimate competition that's coming from bigger out-of-state or foreign production were all mentioned as worries that they're seeing more of. Two farms were concerned about not currently having a good handle on their costs of production, that they need to sharpen their pencils and really start figuring this out. And two of the farms were having problems with finding enough labor seasonally and being able to carry over some workers from season to season. Some of the quotes that came from these discussions. One very optimistic farmer was in the group. He whatever he was growing for his buyers, they were happy with it, and there were no concerns. The other is a little bit more worrisome, I think. And I think the last quote really kind of sums it up. It's no longer our daddy's wholesale market. We have to find new ways of keeping relevant. And I think that's an important lesson. So looking at the next group in depth, these are some of the real big takeaway points from them. These are the farms that were thinking about wholesaling. Small operations, mixed vegetables with some berry crops. They all sell direct market. 3 sell at farmers markets and multiple markets during the week and weekend. 3 have 1 or more CSAs. There's 1 who sells specifically to restaurants. They're all believe that they have to expand their production in order to increase profitability. Their present marketing situation is not enough. Either presently or in the future, they're thinking that they need to make changes. These farms, 3 were very interested in selling to food hubs. I think food hubs are maybe an important buyer who might understand them, small growers, better than larger food operation, larger food buyers or food industry operations. 1 farm is just totally unsure about where to sell. A lot more rural than the others. Got into farming and because they really loved it, bought some land that was, in order to afford it, was further out, but really starting to see that driving into larger areas to sell is becoming costly. So, and cost of production is a concern for 2 of the farms that they really didn't know about it, as we talked. They didn't really have a good handle on it. And the third had been keeping records, but they want to do a better job on it, better and being able to forecast things a bit better. 3 were that really relied on extra labor. It was they were really having a problem. This is a message that we heard, from the focus groups as well as these case studies. And then one farm had specific questions about food safety practices, and the others needed to acknowledge that they need to obtain a better understanding. The 4th farm had attended a food safety training class, but was and had started integrating practices into their production. All 4 farms were worried about pricing. They're used to retailing and getting that direct market price, particularly on products. They could bring in all sizes, for example, of zucchini or even cucumber, and be able to sell it on to customers at the farmers market or through the CSA. They realize that if they're moving into wholesale, that they have to have very specific, high quality, standardized sizing, and for lower prices. So they really were concerned about the lower prices and how that would affect them, even with their expansion. They wanted to know more about if they got into expansion, how much bigger do they have to go in order to crest the curve of these low wholesale prices in order to make a larger profit. So it's sort of an exponential curve sort of thing, where the more they invest into getting bigger, it takes even more to sell in order to make a profit compared to retail. And they were also concerned about investment in equipment or mechanization to become more efficient. And they know that they would probably help them reduce costs, but what's the input of those investments versus the income that would come from selling a lot of product at lower prices. There must be a point somewhere that they should be able to shoot for. All four farms were looking for training or educational programming to help with their decision-making processes. 3 farms brought up learning from other farmers or joining working groups, so they could commiserate with other farmers doing the same thing. They could learn from each other and share experiences. Some of the quotes that came from the case studies, again, there's a lot of emphasis on working together. They realize that financially that they're in a predicament, having small acreage, not having a lot of equipment. If they're going to move into a new market like wholesaling, that they'd have to radically change the way they operate, and they're just totally unsure of just how much it will take and how far they have to go in order to increase profitability. And they really had some negative feelings about larger food industry, the buyers, and things like large grocery store chains, institutions, things of that nature, where prices are low and you're at the whim of the buyer all the time. The food hubs seem to be more appealing to them. So looking at the conclusions and the opportunities for future actions, this is sort of kind of the list that we all developed together. Farms need to really sharpen their pencils and know what their financial situations are. What is it? How do you develop a good cost of production method that's not so time consuming, not so boring, but provides invaluable information that they can help them make really important business decisions for long-term plans. How can you make wholesaling more profitable starting from a small operation, but that has a large amount of different types of vegetables? They do realize, and hearing from the other, from others of larger scale, that the focus has to be on growing a smaller amount of crops and doing it very well. You have to, all growers need to understand the buyer's demands and be on board with that. Farmers need to be flexible. They need to be able to grow top quality products for their buyers, be there when the buyers call, have the consistency with the quality, have and have the quantity that they need as much as possible. Be on top of food safety practices, whether the buyer asks for it or not. They think that it's very important that they make that message clear that their produce is high quality all the way around. and then being able to meet the packaging demands. That can mean investing in one size package, 1 month, and having to invest into other size packaging later on. The market is fickle and changes quite often, more now than it has probably in the past. So the conclusions that we found from the case studies matched what we've heard out of the focus groups, as well as from the broader survey results. So everything is pretty, is in line with that. Labor is overall probably one of the biggest issues. Efficiencies is another area that farms need to be working on to try to become more profitable in areas, knowing that things like food safety, increased costs. If you're going into wholesaling where the prices are lower, you need to be able to make up costs wherever possible. So these are important. They're looking to extension or other programs to help create educational training to cover their needs, particularly moving into wholesale. And they're also looking to extension or other groups to help organize farmer working groups, and so that they can share experiences, learn from each other. Earlier on in this project, having educational material on grading was noted by a lot of growers. So during this whole process in the last 2 years of putting this program together, researching and working on this program, we took it upon ourselves to develop color guides on grading of some of the major vegetable crops being grown in the region and across the state. And more will become added as we get to it and become available. We also have a grading size template to help growers and their workers easily see what the correct sizes are for different vegetable grades. And you can find these at our Cornell Vegetable Program website under marketing. That's one of the deliverables that we have coming out of this project, and we hope to build on that in the future.